play it forward. We have Tara Westwood, um, director, producer. The film is Triggered. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me
Uh,
while I'm on the floor
it is a
in my
pleasure.
bedroom.
I'm
Forgive
glad.
the fact that I'm on the floor and there's a bed behind me, but it's hot and I'm cool because there's no AC and it is what it is. Let's move on.
We have to do what makes our guests comfortable on the show.
I'm on the
And,
floor.
these are within the realm of absolute, cogent standards of legitimacy.
Thank
So
you.
that said, yeah. Would you like to introduce yourself or the film prior to jumping into the three questions?
Yeah. So I'm Tara Westwood. I am an actor. I started off as an actor and I started producing a few years ago because I wanted to basically give myself parts that I would never normally be cast in. And then I like producing. I like producing with the little team of people that I produce with. And I was in this play a few years ago that Amy Schumer's theater company, the collective, had put on. It was a one act called Triggered. And I played the character that I do in the short. And then after we finished it, I won't get into the whole thing now, but I called the playwright and I said, has anyone gotten the rights for this? And he said no. And then that kind of got the ball rolling. And I initially thought that I would just be producing Triggered, and it quickly became apparent that I was going to direct it, which we can talk about if you want to. But yeah, that's what I am. I'm an actor now, director.
So I didn't put that together. So you are the featured lead in the Triggered?
I'm the senator. I'm the one
You're the
that
senator.
yeah, I'm the one
Okay.
that's in the circle. I'm the yeah,
Okay. Got
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Okay, cool. I really respect and appreciate and am inspired by people who like, write their own thing in terms of like, hey, I'm not getting parts. I want to do it myself. So I'm going to go out there and set it up. And Milton Berle famously said, um, if they won't let you in the door, make a door, something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, it's great.
Right. So it's just a great DIY, ethic and ethos, and just get it done and do it for the love of the love, and what happens happens.
Yeah, I just
First,
figured out
yeah,
what I was like DIY. Oh, DIY, got it.
DI did I not say
DIY. No, no, you
DIY?
said it
Yeah.
right. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
I got it.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
Cool. So that's, hats off to you for doing that. It's awesome. Triggered is a heavy duty, well needed film. And the cast, yourself, everybody is super competent, well acted, highly professional production. That said, what was the inspiration for you on a emotional level that said, hey, I want to go after this?
So yeah, like I mentioned, I did the play, and it's about gun violence, this film. And I need to be clear because right away people assume things that aren't true. They assume that I, take away the Second Amendment. I grew up with guns, and it upsets some people that I say I'm a really good shot, but I am. And I think that we need to find the middle ground. I think that people have to have empathy for other people and listen to their thoughts and their beliefs. And what I wanted to do with Triggered is to galvanize a conversation about gun violence prevention, because despite the fact, or also in addition to the fact that I support the Second Amendment, I 100% think that there needs to be some changes in laws that could save some lives. So after I did the play in New York, I reached out and the writer said that the rights were available, and I had thought I would ask a friend of mine who ended up coming on as our EP to direct it, because he's an actor and he's well known, but he hasn't directed a lot. So I thought, I'm going to make this as simple as possible for him. So I got our cast, which is Isaiah Whitlock Jr., Robert John Burke, Caitlin Maynor, and myself. The Newton brothers were so amazing to say that they would come on. They do all of Mike Flanagan stuff on Netflix, and Ed Lucas, our DP, who I could not have done this film without. Galia Moores. I mean, everyone that's involved in the film. Mariah, my co-producer Marie Tresgergis, who I was having lunch with at the time, and I told her, I've got all these great people that have said yes. I feel so fortunate. So I'm going to ask, it's John Leguizamo, the actor, if he'll direct it. And she said, okay, so you're going to John with the cast, the crew, who you want to do the poster, like everything. And what do you you're going to ask him just to take all your people and make the film? And I said, yeah, I was naive. And I said, I'm making it easy for him. And she said, no, that's called directing. She was like, so you should direct this film. And I had a moment of like, oh my gosh, Isaiah had just been nominated for a Golden Globe, and who the heck am I to try to, direct these actors that I admired so much? And then I thought, you know what, it is what the process that I had already started was directing, and I coached actors already. And I'm so passionate about the subject matter that I knew I would go crazy if it wasn't how I wanted it to be. So I asked John to come on as EP. He did, which I was grateful for. And I just went with this little close knit family. Our production team was really wonderful, and it was during COVID, and everyone took on multiple hats because they were all just happy to be there. And that's how Triggered came about. It's a subject that I think is really important to talk about, especially in this country.
What do you think makes it near and dear to your heart?
Gun violence is a wide spectrum as far as the topic goes. I know people who have, someone I love very much has been assaulted with a gun to their head. In the middle of the daylight here in New York City, that was upsetting to me. Needless to say, I know someone who committed suicide with a gun, and they were going through a very difficult time in their life where it was known that they were struggling. So 100%, I am not blaming anyone. I'm simply saying that there are times when guns should be locked up, and there are things that people need to be educated about. So, when I look at Canada, where I'm from, and the fact that we just don't have this epidemic of gun violence, and I live in America and I love this country, I just want people to talk about some of the simple laws that could be changed, because, at the end of the day, I've had people say to me, oh, come on, though, you're never going to save everyone. And that law is only going to save a few people. Like, say, for example, the red flag law. Okay, the red flag law is not going to save everyone.
What's
But
that?
it's a law that, say, for example, I knew someone suddenly out of nowhere. Actually, I'll give an example that happened. There was a mother in California whose son suddenly bought a bunch of AR-15s, and he was not doing well in his headspace at that time. And she called the police and said, I don't know what's happening. He's been going on these rants. He doesn't seem mentally stable. He bought some big guns. I don't know exactly what they are, but they're big. They didn't follow up right away, and he went and killed a bunch of people 2 days later. Had
Hmm.
the moment his own mother called, had they followed up, who knows? Maybe that wouldn't have happened. So that's a very simple way of putting the red flag law. But but even to counter the red flag law, I think if you're just annoyed at someone or mad and you go and accuse them falsely, knowing that what you're saying is false, then there should be a legal ramification for that too. So I don't just, I'm really not someone that's like, let's just do this. I think that it's complicated. And I think that there are some changes that could save some lives. And that's my point, is when someone's like, well, that won't save everyone. Okay, what if it saved those 9 people, or however many people, I forget, I'm sorry, too many mass shootings to keep them straight, that he killed that day? What about those families? I bet those families would have said, yeah, that would have been a nice thing to have happened. So
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the things that you bring up in your film that I was pretty surprised about is that it's a bill was blocked for the mentally ill to possess weapons. Is that based in reality?
everything that's in there was based in reality at some point,
I
but
mean, that's
what's com-
crazy.
but what's complicated about politics is that a lot of these bills are just together. So it's like, say you've got a senator who's all about, their thing in life is climate change, for example. Well, in order for them to get that climate change bill passed, they've got all these other little things that are added, and it could be like a little thing about that. And they're like, oh, okay, whatever, I'm going to sign it. So that's where, again, I'm not a politician in real life. I don't know that much about politics, but I know that it's complicated because everything gets kind of lumped
Right,
in together.
right.
And gun violence is really just something, it's so polarizing. People don't, even politicians. I have a friend who saw Triggered recently, and he loved it. And he was going to Washington for a business thing of his own, and he said that he spoke to a Democratic senator and a Republican senator, and he said, I just saw this really great short, it's called Triggered, it's about gun violence, I think everyone should see it. And they both said, yeah, not interested, we don't have time for gun violence. So and then that's that's kind of what it is. Everyone's got their own thing that they care about. And it's a hard topic.
Right. Yeah. I know from like civics class in high school that there's a lot of negotiation that goes into it in terms of the way you mentioned it. Like, I'll vote for this, you vote for that, we'll roll this up into that. So I think it's a, complicated, just legal process in making change. In addition, you don't have public support unanimous, and that makes it more complicated with people, on these just wildly opposing sides. But there does seem to be a huge opportunity for somebody to come in and say, look, let's just be reasonable about this, and make it, clean this thing up where everybody can just, undeniably say yes to, all of this. And your film, definitely points to a very realistic situation which can happen in terms of how families can respond to this, and to what lengths they've gone to, and just to showcase the suffering on the side of these families for this tragedies that could have been avoided. I mean, that's the bottom line. They could have been avoided,
Yeah.
with some tighter regulations, some level of oversight, some level of just reasonableness.
Yeah.
And the fact that that's not happening is very difficult to understand what powers that are controlling, the scales. It's just hard to understand what's going on and why.
Well, we were at a film festival, and probably the best compliment, or one of them, that I got about Triggered was this man came up to me afterwards and he said, "I love my guns." And I said, "Do you, sir?" And he was like, "I do. I love them. I got a lot of them." And I said, "Okay. What'd you think of my film?" And he said, "You made me cry."
Yeah.
What? And he said, "I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting to come in here. I didn't come to see your film." He came to see a different film that was in the
Mm.
block of shorts. And he said, "And right away when it started, I thought, here we go." And he said, "You made me feel something and think something I hadn't expected and hadn't really thought about." And he's like, "I'll give you some of my guns." I mean, he said it
Yeah.
jokingly, but I was
Yeah.
like, "Great."
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
want all your guns.
Yeah.
I don't want that. And it was just, we ended up having, after that banter, a serious conversation. And he said, "I think that all my friends that I go to the range with and that I'm friends with," he's like, I mean, he literally was like, "Well, I don't think Bob would agree with it, but there's whoever Bob was." This guy is not going to like my film. But he said, "What you didn't do was preach." And that meant a lot to me, because I don't want to preach. And I think that as soon as we start preaching on the left or the right or conservative or liberal or anything, half the country shuts out. They're not interested. So yeah, I mean, that's
Yeah.
whether
Totally.
it's Triggered or anything. I just think that we need to look at each other and have some empathy for each other and try to put ourselves in each other's shoes, and these two people that break into my character's home and Triggered, they're just two people who are desperate. They've lost people they love and they don't know what to do. And I think that so many people right now, for many different reasons in this country, just don't know what to do. And of course, I'm not encouraging that anyone do anything like that. Um, but hopefully through a film like Triggered, we can get that conversation going.
Yeah. Well, you've mentioned the word conversation and empathy a couple of times. And, the second question to play it forward is really, what is the message of the movie for you as a viewer?
Well, I hope that people can feel empathy for all four characters in that film, because right there, something good's happened. Because again, it's so often we're just so set in our direction and our belief of what we believe, and we're not open to seeing the other side. So right there, I'm just hoping that everyone can understand. And I hope that, people can see that I tried very hard not to make this such a polarizing film, because the reality is gun violence is such a polarizing conversation that it's hard to not make it a little political, because it's a political topic. Um, yeah, I just want to make people feel. That's what my
Yeah.
goal. I just want to make people feel. If I
That's
had made
awesome.
that just about the senator, for example, that's not going to make people feel. It's just going to be another political thing. So to really come from the perspective of the victims, of the families who had lost people to gun violence, you hope that we can all have empathy, because whether we've had that happen in our lives or not, we all hopefully have someone that we love, that we want to keep safe, and then that'll open up that empathy portal.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's beautiful. I think that's the value of art in any context, in terms of that's the unique aspect, is that it makes us feel and then opens us up to thinking and growing as people. And one great way to do it is through empathy. I mean, your film certainly does it in terms of not taking, as you said, it doesn't take sides, and it shows the dynamics of what's going on in the home, and in the minds of these people that have been violated. Both sides have been victimized, and, intentionally here is the senator been made to feel like a victim, so she can empathize with the victims who lost their children. And, I don't, um, I've not studied, gun like control in our country in the United States. I don't know why it's such a like flammable or hot button issue. I mean, it's so bizarre on how polarizing it is and how people think it's like a violation of their, Second Amendment rights and to carry arms. And what does that mean? And what does that mean in the modern era? And, how do we settle on a compromise that's, healthy for everyone? And the only way to do that is by listening to one another.
Well, and it's interesting because Thomas Dunn, the writer of Triggered, and the cast and I and John, we all have talked about how the vocabulary is exactly what you just said, because that's what the vocabulary is, which is gun control. And I said, I hope that we don't use that, because as soon as you hear the word control, you want to break out. So we have just been saying gun violence prevention, because like, John laughed. He's like, I don't want to swear on your show. Can I
Oh,
swear?
yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah,
He was like, who wants to be the asshole in the room that doesn't want to prevent gun violence? He was like,
right,
no one wants to be controlled, but
right,
who
right.
doesn't want to help prevent a loss of life? And that's how we speak about it. So I
Yeah,
think just the language, if someone's going to try to pass a law and they use the term gun control,
right.
that's a
No, I
problem,
think it's a
because
great
now you've
point.
got
Yeah,
people that don't want to
yeah,
be controlled, and no one
right,
wants to be controlled. So
right.
I think it's also, you know, again, I don't want to get into politics, but it's like defund the police. That's the most ridiculous thing ever. No one wants to defund the police, or at least I hope they don't. But that's a term that was used that's not what it actually means. So words are important,
Yeah, yeah.
and no one wants gun control. We
Hey,
just want
call it gun what? I'm sorry.
whatever it'll take.
Yeah, no, I mean, call it gun safety,
Yeah,
right? I
yeah.
mean, the people who are, the bearers of arms, as far as I understand, one of the biggest things is gun safety. I mean, it's all right. So that's something everyone can agree on.
Well, 80% of the NRA actually believes in some kind of change, which is, even just a
Right.
simpler, better background check. And that number is astonishing, because
Yeah.
people just right away think, all gun owners are terrible. And it's not true. Like,
Right.
no group of people is all bad. So I
Yeah.
think you just need to open up a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. No, and that's something that we can take away in any, polarizing issues. Like, well, let's not, staunchly barricade ourselves in one side or another. How do we find that middle ground that bridges us as, people, souls?
Yeah.
Last question. How have you been changed since making the film?
Oh gosh. So I'm a mother. I have children, but now I feel like such a mama bear to this film. As an actor, you put in the time while you're filming, and then maybe you go to a festival or you do something like that, but it's done. It's like one and done. I've never in my life spent so much time on a single project. So that has changed me. And my work ethic has always been really great, but I've been really wonderfully surprised by how many people want to help and how many people are interested. Like, even this conversation, people want to say yes, I think. So that's been something that's really beautiful, because it's given me hope. So it's changed me in that way. I also love directing, so it's changed me in that way. We are going to make a feature of Triggered, and I've got also something else that I'm working on. So it's given me another aspect of my career to be passionate about. Um, yeah, I'm just so grateful. Triggered was a game changer for me. Yeah.
Awesome. Tara Westwood, the film is Triggered. Play it forward. Thank you so much for being on the show. It was really nice to meet you in chat.
Much. This was fun. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Till next time, everybody. Bye, Tara. I'm
Bye.
wishing you all the best.